Most retirees choose between Hua Hin and Jomtien based on the price of a beer or the quality of the beach, and that is exactly why so many of them end up moving again after 18 months. Today we're looking at one factor that actually determines if you'll be happy here 3 years from now. I've lived in Thailand for over 15 years. I've spent time in both places. I've got friends in both. And one thing that has become very clear: two people can stand in exactly the same place, same beach, same street, same cafe, and have completely different experiences. One feels instantly at home, the other feels slightly off. Not unhappy, just not quite settled. And here's the strange part: they often can't explain why. That difference matters more than most people realize, because you're not choosing a holiday destination. You're choosing where your life actually happens. And if the place you choose doesn't match your personality, your energy, or your pace, it doesn't fail all at once. It just slowly stops fitting you, quietly over time. So this isn't a video about which place wins. I don't think it works like that. What I've found again and again is something more interesting. One of these places will feel noticeably more natural for you. And the goal here is simple. By the end, you should know which one that is. We're going to look at what daily life actually feels like in both places. Not the holiday version, the ordinary Tuesday version. We'll look at the social side, because that's where most people get surprised. We'll look at cost and lifestyle in real terms. And then we'll cover something almost everyone misses when comparing these two places online. Let's start with the first impressions, because they can be very misleading. When most people arrive in Hua Hin for the first time, there's a very specific feeling. I've heard it described in similar ways by very different people. It's like an exhale. Things slow down, not in a sleepy way, but in a steady way, controlled and settled. The streets feel calmer, the traffic still has that Thai rhythm, but it's less chaotic than Bangkok or the busier resort towns. And here's the first thing worth noticing, because this becomes important later on in the video. Hua Hin feels like an established town with its own identity. It doesn't feel like it exists purely for tourism. You've got proper Thai markets, a working fishing community, night markets that locals actually use, even a royal connection and a long history behind the town. And yes, there is a huge expat community here. Thousands of foreigners live in and around Hua Hin. But here's the key difference. This is something most people miss when they compare places online. It hasn't taken over the identity of the town. It still feels like a Thai place that foreigners have joined, not a resort built around them. Now Jomtien is different. It sits right next to Pattaya, one of the busiest tourist cities in Southeast Asia. And straight away, that proximity matters more than people think. Jomtien itself is its own area, its own beach, its own residential zones, its own rhythm. And compared to central Pattaya, it is definitely more relaxed. But, and this is important, don't underestimate this part. You still feel what's next door. There's more energy around, more restaurants, more nightlife within easy reach, more nationalities and more movement. Not necessarily in your face, but always close by. For some people, that's exactly what they want. They arrive and feel energized straight away. There's always something happening, always somewhere to go, always some variety nearby. But for others, it can feel like the volume never really turns down. Not because Jomtien is chaotic, but because the wider area never really switches off. And here's the part you should pay attention to. This is where most people misjudge their decision. That first reaction you have when you arrive is usually more honest than you realize, but it's not the final answer. Because first impressions fade and routines take over. And that's where we need to go next. Let's look at what daily life actually feels like. Not arrival day, but normal life. I always tell people this. Don't think about your best day on holiday. Think about an ordinary Tuesday. Because retirement isn't made of highlights. It's made of repetition. And here's something most people don't realize yet. This is the real decision maker in Thailand, not beaches or restaurants. The place that makes ordinary Tuesdays feel good is the place that actually determines long-term happiness. So let's walk through it. First in Hua Hin. You wake up, it's warm, bright as usual. Morning coffee is easy here. You've got a mix of cafes, Thai-owned places, expat-style cafes, all within reach depending on where you live. Within 10 minutes, you can be sitting outside with a coffee somewhere calm. No pressure, no rush, no noise you didn't choose. And here's the first subtle difference. This matters more than it sounds right now. In Hua Hin, your day doesn't get pulled anywhere. It unfolds gently. If you like walking, the beachfront is one of the best parts of the town. Long stretches of sand, early morning walkers, a few fishermen, quiet rhythm. Not empty, just steady. Errands are simple. You have Lotus, Big C, Macro, local markets. Everything is there without feeling like you're navigating a system just to live normally. And that's an underrated point, because lifestyle friction adds up over time. By the afternoon, the pace stays gentle. Maybe a swim, maybe staying home, maybe meeting someone for lunch. It's not exciting in a loud way, but it's easy. Now let's switch. Same Tuesday in Jomtien. Morning coffee culture here is even more varied. Local cafes, specialist coffee shops, Western style places with proper setups, plenty of choice. And the beach promenade in the morning has a different energy. Walkers, cyclists, movement, life starting up around you. Still calm but more active. And here's the key shift. This is the structural difference between the two places. Jomtien sits next to Pattaya, and that changes your radius of life. More supermarkets, more malls, more restaurants, more everything. Terminal 21, Central Festival, real scale. And with that comes something else. Choice becomes almost unlimited. Japanese, Korean, Indian, Italian, Mexican, everything is there. Because here's the trade-off most people don't see clearly at first. Because it doesn't show up in the brochures you see. More choice also means more stimulation, more decisions, more movement, more background energy. So a Tuesday in Jomtien feels more active by default. Not bad, just different. And in the evening, if you move towards Central Pattaya, that energy increases again. Some retirees love that. They like options, variety, movement, people around. Others prefer to stay slightly removed from it. I think the social side of retirement is one of the most underestimated parts of choosing where to live. Because when you're working, your social life is already built in. You've got colleagues, routines, familiar faces, structure. But retire abroad and that disappears overnight. And here's the first thing to understand. Where you live replaces that structure in very different ways. In Hua Hin, for example, the expat community is solid, but not overwhelming. There are golf groups, social clubs, hobby circles, and long-standing networks of people who've been here for years. And that creates something important, a settled social environment. The people you meet here usually aren't just passing through. They've usually already decided to stay, and that changes the tone of the friendship. It tends to be smaller circles, more consistency, and less turnover. Now here's the key question for Hua Hin. Do you actually prefer depth over variety? Because if you do, this is where Hua Hin quietly works very well. The pace of social life reflects the town itself. Lunches, coffee meetups, golf mornings, relaxed evenings. Not really nightlife driven, and not constantly changing. And for many retirees, that's the point. But, and this is important, it won't give you constant new social energy. So ask yourself this early. Do you want a stable social world or a growing one? Jomtien is different, and the difference starts with scale. Because you're connected to Pattaya, everything expands. More people, more groups, more events, more movement. And here's the first thing you'll notice socially. It's easier to plug in quickly. If you're the kind of person who enjoys meeting new people without friction, this environment rewards that. You can build a social network here fast. And here's the second key part. There's always someone new arriving. And that creates a rotating social landscape, which for some people is exciting, and for others, it's exhausting. You've got a mix of Scandinavian communities, British retirees, Germans, Russians, American groups, plus constant new arrivals. So the question becomes very simple. Do you enjoy social variety, or does it drain you over time? Because this is where most people get it wrong. They assume more people equals a better social life, but that's not exactly true. It depends what you need. Hua Hin, there's fewer connections and more consistency. Jomtien, there's more connections and more movement. And I've seen both work perfectly. I've also seen both fail, not because of the place, but because of the mismatch. So before we move on, here's the real test. Do you want a social life that stabilizes or one that expands? Hold that answer because it connects directly to cost and lifestyle next. I don't want to turn this into a detailed budget breakdown. There are plenty of those already, but costs still matter because it quietly shapes your entire lifestyle without you noticing. And here's the first reality. Both Hua Hin and Jomtien are affordable for most retirees coming from the West. You can live comfortably in either, but that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is how your life changes depending on where you are. In Hua Hin, housing is stable and established. You've got a full range. You've got simple condos, mid-range developments, high-end gated complexes. It's a mature market. Now here's the first key idea. Hua Hin tends to guide you towards stability without effort. You don't get overwhelmed with choice. But in Jomtien, it's different. There's more supply, more buildings, more competition, which leads to this. You are constantly choosing between options, and that affects behavior more than people realize. I think the daily spending is almost identical until lifestyle kicks in. For example, food, transport, essentials. They're broadly similar in both places. Local food is cheap in both. Markets are cheap in both. Transport is manageable in both. So on paper, there's not much difference. But here's where it changes. Your environment shapes what you end up spending money on. In Hua Hin, it's easier to stay contained without thinking about it. In Jomtien, the options are always visible. Restaurants, malls, events, entertainment. Not forced on you, but always nearby. So here's the subtle shift. Hua Hin reduces temptation naturally. Jomtien expands temptation naturally. Neither is good or bad, but they shape your routine in completely different ways. Healthcare access is strong in both. Hua Hin has Bangkok Hospital, solid private care. Jomtien and Pattaya have multiple private hospitals with strong reputations. And Bangkok is still reachable from both. So medically, there's no winner here. Which brings us to something important. Cost isn't really the decision maker between these two places. Lifestyle is. And that leads us directly into the hidden differences most people don't see. Right, this is where the real decision is actually made. Because most people compare Hua Hin and Jomtien using surface level logic, beaches, prices, restaurants, distance. But that's not what determines happiness long term, not even close. If your need is for stimulation, now stay with me, because this explains almost everything. Some people need a certain level of activity around them, not chaos, but presence. They like knowing life is happening nearby, even if they're not part of it. That background energy gives them momentum. But here's the other side. Some people don't want that at all. They don't need external stimulation. They want calm, space, control over their own rhythm, and they get their energy internally, not from their environment. And here's where people don't notice it at first, because in both places, everything feels fine in the beginning. Hua Hin feels peaceful, Jomtien feels exciting, but then time passes and something subtle happens. If you're in the wrong environment for your wiring, you don't feel it immediately, you feel it slowly. In Hua Hin, it becomes something feels a bit flat. I thought I'd be fine with this. In Jomtien, it becomes I need a break from this. It's a bit much sometimes. And this is the part most people miss. They don't notice the mismatch until it's already their routine. So forget everything else for a moment. Forget beaches, prices, distance. Here's the only question that really matters. Do you feel better imagining energy around you or calm around you? Not in theory, not as a preference, but emotionally. When you picture your actual life, because that answer quietly determines everything else. I've seen people get this right in both places, and I've seen people get it wrong in both places. Same budget, same health, same lifestyle, completely different outcomes. And the difference wasn't external, it was internal. They chose a place that didn't match their natural rhythm. Let me describe the kind of person who tends to do well in Hua Hin. And I don't mean in the first few months, when everything is new. I mean long term, 5 years, quiet Tuesday, no plans. It's usually someone who's genuinely comfortable in their own company. They don't need a constant changing social world to feel good. They're happy building a smaller, stable one. Their life tends to have a rhythm, a morning walk, a good coffee, a bit of golf or swimming, reading, simple lunch, early evening wind down. And here's the key point. That doesn't feel repetitive to them. It feels settled. They usually have independent hobbies that don't rely on other people showing up. They like reading, cooking, cycling, photography, writing, activities that naturally structure a day. And they tend to like something else too. A sense of real Thailand still existing around them. Not a place built entirely for foreigners, but a Thai town where expat life fits into something already established. So if a quieter, more predictable rhythm actually sounds appealing, not just safe but genuinely attractive, Hua Hin is likely your match. Jomtien attracts a very different type of retiree, and it starts with one simple trait. They gain energy from the environment. Not necessarily nightlife, not constant activity, but they like options. They like knowing that things are happening nearby, that there are places to go, people to meet, things to do, even if they don't use them every day, because that creates a feeling of like momentum. Jomtien delivers that through scale. You're connected to Pattaya, which changes everything. More restaurants, more supermarkets, more events, more people, more movement. And socially, it becomes easier to plug in quickly. If you're naturally outgoing, comfortable meeting new people, joining conversations, moving between groups, you'll rarely feel short of connection here. There's also a constant turnover. New arrivals, short stays, changing social circles. For some people, that's exciting. For others, it's exhausting. And that's really the split. Because Jomtien suits people who want variety in daily life, a wide social world, constant options on tap. And if that feels energizing rather than draining, then Jomtien fits your lifestyle very naturally. I know what a lot of you want at this point, a clear answer. Just tell me which one's better, George. And understand that, it would make things easier. But after 15 years here, I don't think the answer exists. Because both places work. Both have retirees living genuinely good lives. And both fail for the same reasons as well. Not money, not health, not location. Mismatch between person and the environment. That's the real factor. The people who do best here are usually the ones who understand themselves properly. Not just what sounds good on paper, but what actually suits their day-to-day life, their energy, their social needs, their tolerance for quiet or activity. Because here's what I've seen again and again. People don't struggle because they choose the wrong country. They struggle because they choose the wrong rhythm. And that's much harder to spot at the beginning. So I'll leave you with this. Forget the comparisons. Forget the lists. Forget what looks best online. The best retirement location is the one that feels right on an ordinary Tuesday. Not on holiday, not a highlight, just a normal day. Because that's what your life actually becomes. And if you get that part right, everything else usually falls into place. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Can you do me a massive favor? There's a lot of people watching the channel, but they're not subscribed to the channel. Just do me a favor and just press that subscribe button. It's free. And just drop a comment down below if you're enjoying the content and which area you are thinking about retiring to. Hua Hin or Jomtien, or maybe another area in Thailand. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.